Anger makes me tense. Even the word anger makes me tense. When I'm in a situation where I feel like there's going to be anger, like someone's getting angry or I'm getting angry, some predictable things start happening in my body. My shoulders start getting tight. I notice that I'm clenching my teeth and my jaw is set. Even right now, I want to go. My hands start to clench up. I can notice that I'm holding my breath. It's like my body knows that two possible things, that something really bad is going to happen, and I either need to get ready to fight or flee. So I don't like anger very much. And I don't think I'm probably alone in that. And I wonder, at least for me, sometimes it's because it feels like there's two choices with anger. Either it's going to erupt into violence, or sometimes I think because that happens so often in our society, we see that anger gets conflated with violence, so we think anger and we think, oh, the violence is going to follow. So I think sometimes then, because I'm so much not wanting that to happen, I try to make anger as small as possible and squish it deep down inside, and it gets repressed. And then it comes out sideways anyway. So it feels like there's not very good choices with anger. Well, Marshall Rosenberg, who some of you know, well known for his work in nonviolent communication, he recently passed away. He says that looking at anger in that way, that the way we typically look at anger is broken. He says that looking at anger as a problem is like the person who had a habit of smoking in bed and catching their house on fire, and then wondered why the fire alarm was going off all the time. And the person would get so annoyed at the alarm that they kept moving houses to try to make the alarm stop. So Rosenberg says to get angry, to get annoyed at anger, to see anger as the problem, is like trying to get rid of the alarm, to shove it under our pillow, to rip it off the wall. And really what the problem is, that the alarm, the anger, is really a gift. It alerts us to a fire that needs to get put out, to a need, a fundamental need that's not being met. So the question isn't, how do we get rid of anger? Anger is a human emotion. It's around to stay. And he would say it's a gift. The question isn't how to get rid of anger. The question is, what do we do with it? What we do with our own? What do we do with the anger of other people? The anger of God? And in this story, the anger of Jesus. Because even though scholars disagree about what happened in the temple that day, it's pretty clear that Jesus was angry. And I think it's important to take a minute to talk about what he was likely angry about, because as a devout Jew, Jesus wouldn't have been angry with the stuff that's normal temple operations. The temple was the holiest place. To make pilgrimage to the temple was what you did as a God-loving Jew. And when you go to the temple, you pay the temple offering. It costs a lot of money to heat and to clean and to keep this building. And you imagine the temple in Jerusalem is huge, right? So it costs money to make that happen. So people paid their money when they came on pilgrimage each year. And because the temple tax offering couldn't be paid in the currency that people carried around, because that currency was the Roman currency. It was the currency of the imperial occupiers. And so that currency had a picture of the emperor on it. And for devout Jews, for Jewish folk, they couldn't give an offering of money with a graven image on it. It was against their Jewish law to carry around an idol in their pocket. So they would come into the temple and there would be money changers to change so that they could have the money to pay their temple offering. Same thing with the animals. Animal sacrifice was one of the holiest things that they could do, that they did. And, you needed to have a perfect, unblemished animal to offer as a sacrifice to God. And if you were traveling from a far distance, you probably couldn't carry your perfect, unblemished pigeon or dove with you. So you came into the temple grounds, and there were people who would sell you unblemished animals so that you could make your offering. The problem was that for the people who were selling those things, they needed to make money, so they were charging a fee. And for most people, or for the people who lived close by the temple, who worshipped, who were lucky enough to have a house close by the temple, who were wealthy enough to pay the tax, no big deal, they probably didn't even notice. But the problem was for the pilgrim, the traveler, the poor, those fees represented a significant hardship. And to make matters worse, the Roman government was in cahoots with many of the religious elites, and so those fees continued to get higher and higher and higher, and the burden on the poor, the traveler, the immigrant, became more and more onerous. And so Jesus was angry. He was angry about the same thing that the Hebrew prophets had been angry about from the beginning. The house that is supposed to inspire us to justice, to do the justice of God, was actually creating an injustice. It was making it harder for the people who were most marginalized to have access to the holy. So Jesus was angry, and he flipped over some tables. He raised the alarm. He wanted people to wake up. So on Wednesday, I am traveling to Palestine for 2 weeks on a trip where I and 12 other people from the United States will spend time with people in Palestine and Israel who know of anger, their own for sure, the anger of the people around them. And they see that anger, they experience that anger erupt in all kinds of ways. Violence, and definitely some repression, some silencing. And the people that we will be with, scholars, politicians, parents, college students, farmers, these people that I will have the privilege to be with every day, wake up, enter into their world, feel that anger, and every day make the choice to act with love and peace and compassion and to work for justice, to be in conversation with people with whom they disagree every single day. That they can do that every day and keep their hearts open, in tune with the anger for sure, because it's impossible not to, but to act not in violence, not in silence. That's a miracle to me. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to go and learn from them and hear their stories. I look forward to coming back and sharing them with you. But the thing is, of course, we don't need to go all the way across the world to see things that in the world that we can be angry about, that people are angry about, or the consequences of living under an imperial or a dominating system or empire. We see that in our own beloved country. This weekend, the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the march from Selma. And as I was watching, as I'm sure many of you were, as I was listening to the speeches yesterday and reading the transcripts of those, I was struck by, that was some tables turning that was happening there on that bridge. They were turning over some tables. There's anger being expressed, disruption, raising the alarm. And what is astounding to me always when I read stories or watch footage from that time is people's ability to speak the truth, to say that anger in a way that is clear, that raises the alarm, and still to move with nonviolence and peace and justice. One of the lines that stuck out for me was John Lewis, amazing person. He said, "Many of us were bloody, but we didn't get bitter." I think that's a miracle. But of course, we don't have to travel back 50 years to see that there are things that can make us mad. That there are things still, consequences of living under empire, that people are experiencing those. Or to see witnesses of people trying to voice their anger in ways that create change. Not violence, not repression, but change. I mean, this is the Black Lives Matter movement, right? This is the tables being turned in our streets. I mean, we know that the anger that erupted out of Ferguson was not only about one black boy, one unarmed black boy being shot, but about a legacy of racism in this country. That even though we've made progress, and it's not to deny the progress that has been made, but even though that racism is still plaguing our systems, our school to prison pipelines. And so people are angry. People of color, white people, young people, old people, speaking out their anger, some at incredible personal risk. Because it is dangerous to be black and to speak anger in this country. Ernest and I were talking about this sermon, and we were reflecting together on it's so different for me, as a relatively small white woman, to be angry, to even be angry in public. Sometimes because of sexism, people think, oh, she's kind of cute when she's a little bit angry. But really, even when people are taking me seriously, it doesn't really register as necessarily violent or dangerous threat. It's so different for my brother Ernest. That's part, thinking about the black boys that I know and I love, and the work they have to do every day when they walk out their doors to try to make sure that nobody thinks they're too mad. How do they speak that rage? When I think about that, the burden that is on someone who's just trying to go to school, the burden that is on the parents who care for that child, I get angry. So the question for me is, what do we do with that anger? I wonder if some of it is we can think about anger as a gift from a good and loving God who gives us these emotions to help us pay attention. To pay attention to what need, in the case of anger, what fundamental need is not being met. To listen for that when someone is angry. What is the need? And then to try to respond. So the tables were turned over. Jesus got angry and he turned over the tables. And so then what happens? Well, what happened in that situation, we're pretty sure that this event likely happened at the very beginning of Holy Week, right after the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Scholars are pretty sure that it was this disturbance in the temple. That what happened next is what happens in empire. When there's people, particularly marginalized people, which Jesus would have been. When marginalized people say enough and turn over the tables and say something, point out the thing that needs to be changed, what happens? So the Roman government swooped in, arrested him, tortured him, and they executed him. Very public way. And we know this happens, right? Even if people aren't killed, they're marginalized, they're silenced, they're imprisoned. It's dangerous to be the one who says, the tables need to be turned, things need to be changed. It's a miracle to me that people are willing to continue to do that. And thank God they are. Thank God those people on that bridge 50 years ago and the people today to create change. I think the gift of anger is it clears us out and it opens us up to what is below that. For Jesus, for those civil rights leaders in Selma, for those seeking justice in Israel and Palestine, for the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement, what is at the root of their action is love. Always, always love. Can we let that flame of anger clear us out and make room for love? The good and gracious, redeeming love of God that at any moment is ready to help us notice the tables have been turned over. We have an opportunity to put them back together. Not as they were, but as they should be. I don't think I can do it by myself. I definitely can't do it by myself. Awesome, thank you. Let's do this one. We might need more help. Thank you. May we see anger as a gift and let that flame of anger clear us out of all that keeps us from seeing what can be changed. And may we step into the abundant love of God and work to create together to create and be that change. Amen.